Hi, I'm Nathan Hillson, and this is the second part in a series of JBEI software tutorials for its ICE software. In the second part, we're going to be seeing VectorEditor and learning how you can use it to edit and annotate your DNA sequences. So let's say that you're in ICE and you found a DNA sequence entry, in this case a plasmid, that you're interested in looking at in a little bit more detail. You can kind of look at a quick preview, but you might want to look at it at a DNA base pair level. So you can kind of click on the Open in VectorEditor link, and this will open up VectorEditor. This is going to look very familiar if you've used other types of DNA viewing or editing software. On the left-hand side, we're going to have kind of a plasmid map view, and on the right-hand side, we're going to have more of a DNA sequence level view. On the left-hand side, you can do things like turn off or turn back on features. You can turn on enzymatic cut sites. You can turn on open reading frame predictions. You can kind of get a little bit of tooltip types of things. For example, if you hover over a red enzyme site, it's going to tell you it's a unique site and tell you where it cuts. Maybe for another particular restriction enzyme, it maybe cuts multiple times. If you wanted to kind of change the sets of enzymes that are being displayed, you can manage those enzymes. So maybe I don't want to show all of these enzymes, and maybe I only want to show the MIT BioBricks restriction enzymes. So now I'm only showing SPE1 as the only site that's cutting. If I want to kind of go back and re-add in all the common enzymes, I can just do that pretty easily. You can also do kind of virtual gel digest. So under Tools, you could simulate a digestion. You can add a particular enzyme, say NDE1, and now we kind of have like a virtual digest of 3 different fragment size. And if you do a tooltip, it'll basically tell you how big that fragment is and kind of like where the two sites would be. You can even change the ladder size if you'd like, things like that. Now, there's a variety of other types of things that you might want to do. So you might want to do some type of a copy and paste. So if you kind of click somewhere on the outside of the plasmid and you kind of just drag the mouse around, then one thing you'll note is that VectorEditor kind of snaps to these different feature boundaries, whether they're features themselves or restriction sites. If you want to get more fine-tuned control over where your selection starts and stops, you can kind of do that in the DNA sequence panel. You can also click on a feature and then go to Select Inverse, which allows you to select everything other than a particular portion of a vector. You can do things like searching for particular sequences, so like CAT, ATG. It doesn't necessarily have to be the literal, it can be an ambiguous sequence. It doesn't have to be DNA, it could be amino acids. Speaking of which, you can kind of turn on the view of kind of amino acids in the sequence. So for example, here would be kind of like the start ATG methionine and things like that. There's a variety of other types of things that you might want to be able to do, and you can kind of explore on your own to a certain extent. In addition to just being able to view or kind of copy and paste from sequences, it also is kind of a full featured editor and sequence annotator too. So for example, if I kind of maybe go into a portion of the sequence and maybe I'm just going to start typing and do some insertions. There's also kind of like the full undo redo stack, so you can kind of undo your changes if you want. And you can also kind of create or edit existing feature annotation. So I can kind of select a portion of the sequence, I can right click, select as new feature, maybe something like my new feature, and then I can give it a feature type, maybe it's a miscellaneous signal, and say OK, and now I have a new feature that's there. I can also kind of just undo that. Now, after you make edits, if you want to, you can basically save it back to ICE. In this case, I don't really want to save any of my changes. But that's kind of a very quick whirlwind tour of VectorEditor. You can definitely play around with it more yourself and figure out all of its functionalities. So that's how you use VectorEditor to kind of look at your DNA sequences, edit them, and add features to them. In the next part, part 3 of this series, we're going to be looking at some of the additional types of information that's stored with entries in ICE.